Hello everyone, Nick here. I'm back after about 2 months break since the last video came out. And this video is basically going to be a news reaction video to the news that Doctor Who Redacted will be getting a second series. Hooray! But there's one massive stipulation, which is not a good sign. And that is that Ella wrote... No, sorry, that was the co-writer of Legend of the Sea Devils. Sorry, wrong Ella. Ella Watts, sorry, is not going to be the producer of Doctor Who Redacted Series 1. She was the producer of the Series 2. She was the producer of Series 1, which she was also the person who got the series up and running off the ground. She pitched it to the BBC. She got Juno Dawson on as head writer in 2019, a year after pitching it. And in 2022, it came out under her producership. And now Ella Watts has been not re-offered to become the producer of Series 2. She's been let go. Apparently she's left the BBC. So if that's the case, then understandably they'll want to look for somebody else. But if not, then they pretty much let her go without explanation, which is what she says happened in a post on Twitter. So who... excuse me. So who did they get to replace Ella Watts, a queer woman who was the producer behind a massively queer piece of Doctor Who Expand the Media, featuring a lot of queer people and a lot of queer characters, basically being a massive double thumbs up to the queer community and being a blast of a listen to whatever your side of the LGBT side coin you fall on, as in whether you're LGBT or if you're a straight person like me, or if you're male, female, or whatever. It didn't matter. It was a great series to listen to, regardless of who you were, besides bigots, because bigots will obviously not like it because they're bigots. But yeah, after such a successful LGBTQ plus series and with massive LGBTQ plus and female representation in this piece of expanded media, which was a blast to listen to, by the way, who do they get to replace the who do they get to replace Ella Watts, a queer woman who pitched the idea? It was her brainchild. It was her idea, and she was the one to spearhead it. So who did they get to replace her? James Goss. BBC, what the hell are you doing? Okay, before I get into my main point, I will say James Goss is a fantastic writer and producer, and he deserves all the praise he gets. And it is the one nugget of positivity, besides the fact that Redacted is returning. But in regards to Ella Watts being booted and James Goss being brought in, the one piece of good news coming out of that is that they do have a great writer/producer to continue producing this series. The problem is, Ella Watts was a queer woman, and this is a series about queer people. James Goss, as brilliant as he is a straight, white, heterosexual dude, male. And whilst I can't say one of them can't produce or write for the series, it feels like a big step backwards having the BBC take basically a queer person's passion project, a queer woman's passion project to be precise, booting her off the project after a successful first series and giving it to a straight white dude. That is the problem. This series was a major flagship for the Doctor Who trans and queer community. It was a massive game changer, and it was done so well. And it's a positive showcase for them. And a positive place for them to work in and featuring as many positive characters as I mentioned earlier. And then for series 2, as great of a producer as he is, they bring in James Goss, a white, straight, heterosex. That what's the opposite of trans? I can't remember. But yeah, a straight dude. And yeah, it feels like it's a step backwards. I mean, if he wasn't sole producer, maybe if he was co-producer, I could understand it a bit more. But sole producer, this feels like it's a step backwards for the BBC, who have hired this queer woman to produce the series, and another queer woman, Juno Dawson, to be the head writer. And they feature all these queer characters, and then you give the producing role over to a straight man. As Ella Watts says in her post, this isn't the first time a successful podcast has been taken away from a woman and given to a man after a successful first series or successful first series. But it feels like this is a massive slap in the face to the queer community, that this big flagship audio series for Doctor Who that was made by queer people for the most part and features mostly queer characters, certainly in the main cast, both character-wise and acting-wise, and they're brilliant, by the way, both cast and characters. And then they give it to a guy, and a straight guy at that, not even a queer guy who might understand some of the subject matters, or to a straight woman who, whilst straight, would still understand how female characters would be written. Not saying that straight white dudes can't write female characters, but it does feel like a slap in the face, or produce stories about them in this case, but it does feel like a bit of a slap in the face that they asked James Goss to do it instead of hiring another queer woman, or even another woman or a queer guy to do this, to produce the series. No, they went for a safe pair of hands with someone who's had massive experience. And yeah, having massive experience, good thing, but it does feel like a step backwards in terms of representation. And this is the BBC; they're supposed to be impartial. That's what the whole Gary Lineker stuff is kicking off recently. Side note: despite not being a football fan, I'm standing with Lineker, and it just feels like it's a step backwards. And there's all these people going, the BBC has a woke agenda, Well, I suppose you could show this to them and say, actually, the BBC have done something you probably approve of. Oh, okay, half approval, because they recommissioned the series you probably wouldn't have been approved of, but they replaced the producer with a straight white guy. So be 50% happy or 50% unhappy. I don't care about those cunts. That's fucking not my doctors and bigots. They can all go suck balls in hell, for all I care. But yeah, it does feel like the BBC, who wants to represent everybody, has gone a step backwards. If it was the safest choice, then maybe, but it still feels like a big step backwards. Like I said, I'm not sure exactly what's happened with Ella Watts, if she's left or if they just didn't ask her to come back. I'm not sure exactly what's gone on, but the fact that they've hired a white straight man to produce a mostly queer LGBT project that features mostly female characters and is being head written by a female writer, a queer female writer, and was previously produced by a queer woman, it's not a great sign. Series 2 of Doctor Who Redacted could possibly be even better than Series 1, but it is a bit of a questionable decision to change the producer, or rather the choice of the new producer is a big choice, a big question mark. I really hope the BBC have actually thought about this, because this is not good on their part. As great of a guy as James Goss is, as great of a producer and writer, if he writes for the series, he's probably going to write a great episode. But I do believe that this was a bad move. If they have to replace Ella Watts, then why couldn't they get another woman, a queer or not, or a queer man? So at least one of the two elements of the series are sticking true. So if a woman would still know how the female characters work. I'm not saying the man couldn't, but it's better. Or a queer guy would know about the queer stuff. Again, heteros would still, but more likely the queer people would be better at understanding it because it's about them. And the fact that they didn't even go with one of those, let alone a queer woman, it's disappointing. They didn't even go with someone of color. They didn't even try to do that. It's a white guy as well, which makes it even more backwards thinking. Like they're taking it from like representation person to it's just the usual straight white dude. It's basically if I got the job, minus the experience part. Or actually, I would like to write for the series, but I'm not sure if they'd take me. But anyway, point is, it's looking a bit dodgy on the BBC's part about taking a queer woman's passion project, and now she's either left or she's been dropped from the project, and they've, instead of giving it to another queer woman or another woman period or another queer person period or even someone of color, they're giving it to a straight white dude. Cisgendered, that was the word I was looking for. Cisgendered, who's also cisgendered. And it's not even a trans person, it's a cisgendered person. I'm sure whatever James Goss does with the series, and Juno Dawson, who's staying on as head writer, and the new writer who's been announced, and any other new writer, and any cast members who may or may not be coming back, and any new cast members coming on board, they'll do a fantastic job, and Series 2 will likely be as good as Series 1. It's just that the decision is raising a couple of big red flags in terms of production team and the BBC's mindset of, we have a really successful podcast radio drama series here, but our producer is leaving, or we don't really want her to carry on producing them. Who should we get to replace her? Let's bring in a straight white dude. Yeah, that'll do, even though the series is about queer women. And like I said, I'm not saying that white straight dudes can't do it, but it's a massive red flag saying that they're just taking it from this queer woman and giving it to a straight white dude. Honestly, I think it would have been better if they were just writers. If I'm not saying they can't, like I said, I'm not saying they can't be the producers, but I'm just saying it's a bit dodgy. And I think it might have been better if they just had James Goss as a writer and found another queer person, even if it was a man. Well, it would be better if it was a woman. Or if they found another woman, better if they were queer, to produce the series. Or if they just kept Ella Watts on the project to begin with. They could have saved themselves some hassle. But no, Ella Watts is out, and James Goss will be the new producer of Doctor Who Redacted, and it looks like a backwards turn in terms of representation as far as the BBC on the BBC's part. Well fucking done, BBC. Well done. Like I said, whatever James Goss does, he'll probably do a really good job with it. But the whole fact that you've gone and done this in the first place raises those red flags. Well fucking done. Okay, so that's the main the main point of this video out the way. So that's pretty much what I wanted to do. Get my opinions out on that. As for Doctor Who Redacted Series 2, what are we likely to see? We might see more of a continuation of what we saw last series with the whole Redacted thing. It was pretty much wrapped up, but who knows? Maybe there's more to it. Maybe there's more stuff going on. Maybe it's not quite done yet. And of course, which Doctor will they have in it? Well, they could get Jodie Whittaker back if she was pregnant, but if they had been recording over the last year, then she probably would have had time at home. However, if they're going to record, then she probably won't be able to come back because she's on another project. They could get David Tennant if it's going to be out before he regenerates into Ncuti Gatwa, as he is the current incarnation, or they could get Ncuti Gatwa if it's coming out next year. In terms of other Doctors, the most likely could be Jo Martin because, again, it's focusing on female representation in the series. So having a female Doctor would be better. And if they can't get Jodie, they could get Jo. The other option is going back and getting a past Doctor. Obviously, there are plenty of them working at Big Finish right about now, plus a couple of voice imitators. Heck, they might not even have the Doctor in the next series. If they can't get Jodie or Jo, they might decide not to bother. Not saying that they'll immediately dismiss having a male Doctor in the cast, but that was one of the selling points of the series, is that it was a series about queer women meeting a female Doctor, actually queer and female later in the tenure as well, come to think of it. But yeah, so the idea of meeting a male Doctor in audio, they do kind of hint to the 10th Doctor, but well, of course they do. The 10th Doctor's almost always the character, the Doctor that always got referenced in the Jodie Whittaker era, besides the Power of the Doctor, which referenced the classic ones. But yeah, anyway, so they might do a male Doctor in the series if it's either the current Doctor, David Tennant, or Ncuti Gatwa, depending on release, or they may go back and get a past Doctor. I wonder what they do with some of those Doctors. I was going to make a joke just there, but it kind of got swept away. They might not do David Tennant's 10th Doctor if they can get him as 14, come to think of it. As for any of the others, I'm not really sure who would be up for being on board. Maybe one of the Big Finish regulars, Peter Davison, Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy, Paul McGann. But yeah, we'll see. Or maybe one of the voice substitutes, the imitators, like Jonathan Carney. What if this has something to do with the Time War? Ooh, I'm looking forward to more Jonathan Carney War Doctor content. There's going to be a new 2-part ranking of his audios on Universal's coming soon, by the way, and I'm looking forward to his next War Doctor Begins box set. But yeah, so it'd be interesting to see which Doctor they tackle in the next series, whether that's a current Doctor or they reuse an old one, including Jodie or Jo. So yeah, and if it will be a female Doctor, if they're gonna dare to use a male one. Or maybe it won't even be from this universe. It might be an alternative Doctor, and that's if they use them at all. Anyway, so that's really all I've got to say about all of this. Before I do go, I would like to shout Happy International Women's Day for yesterday to mainly my female viewers, but to everyone as well. And also, there will be a new Doctor Who sketch or short, or maybe even a new minisode dropping on Red Nose Day next Friday. Yay! Featuring David Tennant as the 14th Doctor. Ooh, which will, if it is a new special or something, new Red Nose Day mini special, then this will be the 14th Doctor's second new adventure after the ongoing Doctor Who magazine comic that started in November. It's still going. It's up to part 5 or part 6 at this point in time. They're so short now. I mean, I haven't been reading the 13th Doctor comics, or even some of the later 12th Doctor ones, as much as I used to read the 11th and earlier 12th ones. But like, the comics in Doctor Who magazine used to be a bit longer. But with the 14th Doctor ones, they seem to be like 4 to 6 pages at a time, whilst the older ones used to be about 8, maybe 8 or 10. They took up a good couple of pages in Doctor Who magazine, similar to Doctor Who Adventures, where they took up a couple pages, like maybe 6 or 8, and then they went down to a 4-pager around sometime during the 11th Doctor's era. And this is the original Doctor Who Adventures. I can't speak for the reboot era from the late 11th Doctor and into the 12th, or the single special issue during 13's era. But for Doctor Who magazine, they used to have longer comics, at least in recent issues, and now they're down to like 4 to 6 pages. Recently, it's back to 6. So yeah, they're stretching this 14th Doctor story arc out. I don't know if they have to stretch this one out over the whole year, or if they can do two, that they have to stretch out over 6-ish issues. But yeah, it's a long one, and it's well, I say it's a long one, but it's not many pages. So yeah, no wonder it's being stretched out. It's a bit of a thin plot at this point in time. But that's nothing against the writers. It's just that it's being stretched out over more issues than maybe it should have been if it was a regular Doctor Who magazine adventure. But anyway, if the comic relief sketch coming out on Friday is a new Doctor Who mini Red Nose Day minisode special, then it will be the second 14th Doctor adventure after the Doctor Who magazine comic Liberation of the Daleks. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, so thank you for watching this video discussing / a little bit of a rant on Ella Watts being replaced as producer of Doctor Who Redacted by James Goss, who is not a queer woman like Ella Watts, but a straight white man, and how that is a bit of a step backwards in terms of representation and is not a good look on the BBC's part. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Comment down below what you think will happen in Redacted 2, or what it will be about, as well as what you think is going to happen on Red Nose Day, whether you think we'll get a brand new 14th Doctor adventure, or if it's just going to be a silly skit or something with David Tennant in costume. Either way, or something else. Comment down below your thoughts on all of this, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.